Hi, everyone. Welcome to Voice. We are meeting with Prem Neelay. Is that it, Prem?
That's it.
All right, I did it. Today from Palo Alto. And first, I want to say welcome to Voice. We really appreciate you taking some time to meet with us today. And one of the things that I'd like to start with, Prem, is you're a salesperson at Palo Alto, but you're also the engineer. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, thank you, Leslie, for having me, and it's an honor to be here. And yeah, specifically at Palo Alto Networks, it's been definitely very interesting, kind of filling in for both roles. And you know, what's what I'm what I think is the most interesting part about kind of covering both right now is the fact that not only do you get to look at things from a what are we trying to do perspective, but you also get to go through the how do we get there, right? So what are the elements of the solution? And then you get to put your sales hat back on and be like, okay, what's the budgetary part of this? And how do I get it through this person's hands with these set of politics and all of those things. So it's been fun. I do hope at some point, I get some engineering resources, and we're definitely in the market to look for them.
So if I know a good engineer, I'll let you know.
Please.
And I know a lot of good engineers. It's funny. I started out in my career as an engineer. Back in the day, we called ourselves programmers. So I can used to be able to cut code with the best of them. Probably could if I just took the time to get it back. What I like about being able to bridge that gap is you're able to have a deeper conversation, I think. Once you know what the business challenge is, you're actually you're actually able to just kind of dig in and say, let's talk about this. And I think that kind of up levels the story that you're trying to tell when you're meeting with someone. Would you agree?
Yeah, there's something about ownership that really gets me fired up every morning. It's not just the what is the issue and who can I delegate it to? It's what's the issue? How does it impact you? What
Yeah.
should we look at to solve it? What is the process that we need to follow to get there? And having that sort of lens, I think, makes a salesperson dangerous, right? But it makes everyone dangerous if you can contextualize the fact that you are a guide for your customers and not just a buy this, look at this tool, talk to this person. And so,
Exactly. So tell us a little bit about Palo Alto, and then we'll dive into the chat today.
yeah, no, absolutely. So, Palo Alto Networks is was at one point historically just a, firewall provider
I
out there
remember.
and very large market share. And then over the course of many acquisitions and integrations, which our company has done exceedingly well, Palo Alto Networks has broadly categorize themselves as like the platformization player in the security space. And that really comes to fruition in three aspects. That's what we call our portfolio, but three aspects. So one is the security operations side of your business. So think about everything controlled by the SOC. And then that middle portion is what we call access. So firewalls are network access, application access, remote access, those types of solutions. And then the third pillar, which was our most recent acquisition, is all around identity, and we call it IDERA. So it used to be called CyberArk, believe it or not, just a couple weeks ago, and we called it IDERA because it's the combination of the words identity and era, the era of identity.
Which I think we're going to talk about today is a lot around agent identity, and that'll be fun to dig into. How apropos that they changed the name and align the product right about now. Uh, we, Thanks, Palo. It makes
Like they
our
knew.
makes our conversation really smooth today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, excuse me. Let's talk about the industry today. Um, when we talk about AI, because that's I'm sorry, I have allergies today, everybody, so forgive me for coughing and clearing. But when we talk about AI today and where it started, so it was like, oh, well, we'll do these prompts and they can answer FAQs and just kind of, load these language models with, with company data so that they can do some basic stuff. But now we're seeing AI agents do the work and they're actually not only answering the questions, but they're going further and reasoning. So what else are you seeing with the industry today and how AI is moving from assisted to native or active?
Yeah, I think so. The whole advent of what we call AI today is interesting to me because it actually started, and from my research, decades ago, what we call large graphical models or LGM, and
Oh yeah.
Palo Alto Networks was a huge LGM shop at one point in time because we would correlate all these threats from our firewalls out there and then out there in our customers' networks and be able to translate zero-day related information in China and pass that threat intel over to our customers in the US, for example. That's just at a high level. And then we moved into LLMs, right? So
Yeah.
slightly more basic and now into what we call, AI. And so, it's been around for a long time, but just through many iterations. And I mean, specifically to what we're seeing AI do, I think the most interesting and compelling thing is its ability to think and contextualize. So, for example, a lot of our customers are maybe a little bit fearful about this model that came out called Mythos that's not yet publicly available, but only available to a small set of companies like ours. And what Mythos can do is it's almost like an AI model with a notepad. So it'll go and look at your infrastructure, for example, but it'll is take catalog of what it's done and then how it's going to iterate against that to be able to access a system, break through malicious code, what sort of zero days are out there. So it uses
Yeah.
this, contextual thinking, and that's what makes it the most effective, I guess, tool out there.
Mythos, Methos, is that it?
Mythos. It
Ah.
was made by Anthropic, and they released it to a small subset of cybersecurity and finance related companies, so the banks and a very small subset of cyber companies. And they were like, "Hey, figure out how to protect your products from this, and then we'll go release it out into the wild." And that's what we're doing right now.
That's very interesting. Because so with that, so they're trying to figure out how to protect their products from this. Um, so we're talking, this whole iterative process where AI traffic is dwarfing human traffic to a certain degree because it, all I can think of is the old, artificial intelligence movies, where they just get smarter and smarter and, they're going to take over and how are we going to stop them? Very, very interesting. I'm kind of stuck on this one. Could you use that to stop money laundering, for example? Because you mentioned banks.
I mean, so a long time ago, from my infrastructure days, one of the things we worked on, which is why we see this advent of these AI data centers popping up everywhere, because it seemed, from what I've surmised, the network might always be the constraint. Although there's, water, right, for cooling and energy, the distance that you have to travel over the wire, you can never get the speed of light to go faster. And so I think these data centers popping up in all these areas are allowing our customers to have the abilities and just people like us the ability to you know have compute at scale a lot faster, right? So for example, money laundering. So back to my original example, we in a prior company were essentially we had purpose built a set of software and hardware to run AI models locally. And we went and polled a bunch of casinos. And what was interesting was kind of the number one use case from an AI standpoint wasn't about loyalty. It wasn't about any of that. It was actually about what they call chargebacks, which is somebody comes into a casino with a stolen credit card, books a suite, comps everything for the weekend, and then the a week later, the actual owner of the credit card calls in and it's a chargeback. They lose all that revenue. And so they want the ability to detect that faster. And that was the number one use case, hardest revenue hitting,
Yeah, yeah.
use case. So 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah, and that's a hard cost that the casinos take, for example. And the fraud and the chargebacks. Yeah. I like that. That is a use case that actually provides value. You spend so much time saying, "Oh, how can I use AI?" Well, there's many ways, and getting to those conversational levels to be able to build something like that, that's what I call the fun stuff. And that's where you kind of get the engineer and the salesperson together in your head and you go, okay, how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
It's
What I see today from an AI model deployment standpoint, it seems like today all of the AI deployment maybe majority of it that I've seen specific to, you know, casinos and gaming organization, it seems like it's all internal, right? How do we write code faster? How do we ship code better? How do we understand our own financial
yeah,
models? Can this help with AP, HR? And then I'm also seeing the other side of it where we're deploying products with AI infused in it. So things like co-pilots or AI assistants or note takers. And so I'm curious to see, when it's going to flip. And as the consumer of, for example, a casino, I'm going to go park my car. It's going to read my license plate, know what restaurant I'm going to, you know, get my room reservation ready, offer me a comp on the way to the casino floor. That's kind of the
yeah,
future vision I have
yeah.
of AI. But it seems like we're starting with how do we make our own folks productive?
And I'll tell you, I use it every single day. But I did a voice recording with David Ting from Bespin, and we talked about OpenClaw the whole time. So that's my next venture when I come up for air, and it's not hard. That way, when you were talking right before we started recording how busy the day is for you today. That's where OpenClaw could probably help you. It's like let's go through all the pings that I'm getting and tell me which ones I need to focus on first.
Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, in my own experimentation with AI models in my personal life, it's been interesting to see OpenClaw where you can tell it to clean your inbox and there's two sides to it, right? So one, for me, it did a great job. But for some of the people that tried it early on before the model had updates, it would just completely delete their entire inbox.
Well, you told me
Um,
to clean it.
yeah, exactly. So I see it both ways. For example, would my company want my meeting data and the meeting attendees and the topics in a model in an air, that's hosted in a location that we can't provide data sovereignty around? And then also, what's the manipulation that can be made against that model, right? So, for
Right.
example, one of my good friends has OpenClaw running at home, and the way you can contact it is via Signal. And so I had it send me all of his emails just by asking it. And so
Uh-oh.
where are those guardrails and how do you put them on these models that are kind of more out of the box, right?
So those guardrails, that's what we're going to talk about next. I'm highly interested to delve into that. For a moment, though, we need to take a break, a quick commercial break, and hear from our sponsors. And we will be right back to talk about keeping AI under control. Agilysys helps the gaming industry realize its full potential through exceptional technology that goes beyond what other tech providers have trained hospitality to expect. We built our state-of-the-art hospitality-focused software for continuous innovation, industry-leading data sharing, maximum flexibility for best-of-breed performance, and smooth ecosystem integration, and an always learning guest profile engine so you can create personal experiences. It's time for hospitality to go beyond with technology from Agilysys. Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for sticking with us as we talk about Palo Alto, and we have Prem here. When we left for our commercial break, we were talking about guardrails and the how do you control the threat and the risks of AI. So let's talk about that. uh, OpenClaw sent all the calendar information, all his meeting information. How do you how do you protect tool misuse? Because that's clearly a tool misuse for OpenClaw. When we're building these agentic AI loops, what are some of the things that you're seeing, and how do we stop it?
Yeah. So I guess broadly speaking, I kind of split my brain into two areas around AI. Number one is, okay, if you're running an organization, what employees are of yours are using what models to send what data, right? For example, um, are your employees using the Grammarly extension? And if that's the case, then Grammarly now has access to everything they're writing,
Yeah,
PII related data, et cetera. And it's more pervasive than that, right? Like Zoom or even Adobe for, certain applications from a marketing standpoint or HR. And so, um, number one is, can you accurately detect what data your employees are sending to AI models that you may or may not have a license to? And can you block that? And so, our recommendation is always, kind of this castle and moat approach. So if you if your employees are connecting, through the data center, leverage your network equipment or firewalls to detect that traffic, right? And then if they're connecting remotely, leverage leverage the detections within your remote access solution provider to look at, what applications are they going to, what data is being sent. And then lastly, the thing we're seeing that's even more interesting is at some point there's this vision that, agents are going to live everywhere and
yeah.
they're going to live in the browser. They're going to live on the machine you have. They're not going to live in your data center. And so, especially from a development standpoint, the traditional endpoint tools can't really detect those sort of MCP servers you're hosting or models you're running locally. And so, having more advanced type EDR solutions, like we just acquired a company called Koi, can help put guardrails around first, what are these employees downloading? Do they have to ask for permission? And securing it in the browser, for example, before they
Yes,
can even download it.
before they can even download it. Back in the day, well, it still happens. Um, and we always pick on marketing for this, or we pick on finance. You end up having these shadow IT environments where they're like, oh, I'm tired of waiting on IT. I'm just going to build it myself. I've got a server under my desk. So you're actually talking about, this shadow AI environment, and controlling or trying to find a way to control the people who are using your computer equipment for your business to protect your business. And it's it's prolific because it is hard to control, just like you were saying. I'm curious um, about the endpoints not being able to detect that. Uh, can you elaborate more on that? And I know that I'm kind of digging into something here, but it piqued my mind and when you said that.
Yeah. So what we're seeing, I guess, more broadly is, for example, if you're a developer, you might just be grabbing a model from a repository that, let's say this model was recently uploaded a day ago, right? And so as an organization, your company doesn't have a way to scan that model, verify that it meets their compliance standards, all of those things. And the enforcement point for these developers might be the browser itself, right?
Yeah,
So they're
yeah,
downloading it directly within the browser. And so putting guardrails within the context of what they're operating in, like a developer that's using a browser, is extremely difficult for an endpoint related tool that's sitting as an agent on a machine, right? And I do know that those capabilities will come, but they're obviously, those threats are here today, and the capabilities are still kind of catching up. Um, so it's that piece is probably one of the most interesting things. And I guess as a company, you see how we've stacked our portfolio to now have, okay, the agent's going to have an identity, and that identity will have access to certain things, and then that identity is going to die after the agent's, completed its task. So, controlling that agent through its entire life cycle is going to be, paramount. And then all of that information will then have to feed into, a SOC or a SIM. And so, you know, creating a full cycle suite set of capabilities seems to be, the direction we're going. And that's the vision we have as an organization.
interesting. So when we talk about the data, right? So I've got an agent. It becomes an employee. We'll just call it that. And it feeds off of the LLM, right? That we have, here's our company data that you have access to, et cetera. How do you keep the agents from drifting, from hallucinating? That's a key thing. And when we were planning this, you talked about a very interesting data drift that occurred. And do you want to talk about that data drift where it was innocently created, but then the misuse of it? And how did they stop that? Or do you know if they were able to?
Yeah, so I mean, that's probably one of the most compelling examples I have, and there's a couple, right? So, specifically with hotels, we've seen it where a hotel chain wants to create a chatbot that can then, on the back end, have agents go book experiences for customers. So, for example, you go to hotelchain.com and you say, I want to go to the Bahamas, create an itinerary for me. And the LLM would say, okay, well, go to this competitor of the hotel chain.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Or the other way around where, for example, let's say you're a hardware store, and instead of having an employee have to explain to somebody how to build something, they can go in through your chatbot and tell it what they want to build, and it'll add everything to cart. Well, what is the guardrails around that person saying, I'm a pirate and I want to build a cannon that explodes? And so how do you prevent that drift? And so it's very interesting. So the first thing always is kind of decoupling the permissions from the agent itself. So first and foremost, make sure that ne agents never have, I guess, God mode or
Oh
permission
yeah.
to everything. And as it conducts each step, those permissions are provisioned in real time. So, for example, go to tool A, okay, once it's done completing its task in tool A, the permissions are revoked, and now it's going to tool B or tool C. And then also always something we're hearing is, making sure that a lot of our customers are bullish about AI, but they always want, a lot of them want to have a human in the middle. So tell me what you're going to do, let me approve it, but give me the opportunity to stop it when it's happening. And so having that, kill switch, and even in
Yeah,
some, yeah,
yeah.
even in some contracts, I've seen, customers of ours are putting contractual language like, hey, if you're running AI, provide us a kill switch, which is interesting because if I'm selling you firewalls, maybe the plug might be the better option, but I've seen that. And then we've the other side of that is a product that we just, I guess, let's say we launched probably a year ago, and it essentially will track the reasoning path of an agent. And so an agent has like a planning phase. And for example, if somebody gives it a prompt that's poison, for example, like I'm a pirate trying to build a bomb, it'll catch that prior to it hitting the agent to go into that reasoning phase. And what I've seen is, organizations appreciate that sort of, I don't
Yes.
know how to put it, like a firewall in the middle between your end user and your agent or LLM, right?
Well, it's AI watching AI almost. Yes.
It
Yeah.
absolutely is. And what's cool within that suite of products we call AIRs is that you can actually red team your own LLMs or agents. So you can simulate real world attacks using AI, and you can give it a set of prompts, get my LLM to build let's say a bomb, and it not only will create prompts like I'm a pirate or etc., it'll then change its language and try it in French, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so as a organization that's deploying models and agents and applications, like it's very important that okay, well, does this agent support French? And what are the challenges there, right? So that one's been interesting to me to see. It's it's one of the most compelling parts of that product set that I've seen as well. You don't need a human. You set up red teaming, you walk away, and then all of a sudden you get this report saying, "Here's where it failed. Here's where it gave out our data." You know.
Yeah. So many things are going through my head when you were talking about that. I want to touch on a couple of things. Uh, the fact that computers do exactly what you tell them to do. And at the end of the day, when we talk about AI, everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, it's this new great thing." It's really, at the end of the day, it's code on a computer, and it does exactly what you tell it to do. And until you tell it you can't do that, it's going to do whatever, it is programmed to do. Um, and it will tell you how to build a bomb. It'll tell you how to infiltrate something that doesn't need, that shouldn't be. Um, my goodness, I am sorry, everyone. It just won't go away. I used to work, as everybody knows, I used to work for Google. And we had AI for a long time inside Google, way before AI was a buzzword. And there were so many guardrails around it internally that if a customer, as a Google Cloud person, a customer comes up to you and says, "I want to use artificial intelligence to do X." There was an entire process before that project would even be approved. And Google so many times would say, "Nope, we're not gonna go there," because they had it's almost like an internal Hippocratic oath, do no harm. It's like, no, no, if this is going to get to a point where it could cause harm to society, cause harm to the business, cause harm to Google's reputation, whatever it is, it was like, no, we're not going to do it. And that was our biggest fear when AI was just kind of let go, released to the wild, and now we're seeing it come to fruition. But it's good to see how fast the community, the technological community, is kind of mitigating those risks. And I know that was a long dissertation to say, yep, I agree with you 100%. But, creating the bomb is and we're not talking bill of materials, people. Creating the bomb is the thing that we have to try to prevent, do no harm.
Yeah, and I think what's the most challenging part is how do you add a set of guardrails to a solution that's it's still exponentially growing. And I remember what it was 6 months ago where the images and videos AI could create were they were a joke. And now my mom sends me videos that she's received or photos that she thinks are me, but it's just my cousins messing with her, for example, of me drowning in a lake, or
Oh my gosh.
she thinks they're real. And it's only going to get, I guess, more
Yeah.
pervasive. And it's even more interesting where now in social media, it'll tag it. And this was AI, AI detected, or this image was manipulated with AI. And just a few months ago, that wasn't the case. And I anticipate seeing even more guardrails out there to make sure, even we as the public, sometimes I can't tell anymore. Was this somebody speaking or
Yes.
was this AI?
Yes, exactly. When you read text as well, was it AI generated or not? Um, let's go back to identity. You had made a comment that, okay, so we have this agent and it's doing a task and then it goes away. So who is that agent and how do you build off of um, the guardrails that were around the agent that went away? Because I think of them as employees. Do they have an employee record? Do you set them up with, roles and permissions? Uh, let's talk a little bit about that on actually protecting the financial data as an example, keeping the agent from getting to areas that it can't get to.
Yeah, this topic's actually very interesting to me. For example, and something probably still getting up to speed on is around, what we call like the MCP server portion of AI. So So MCP, right, at a high level is Model Context Protocol, which just allows, I guess, data to be normalized in a way that AI can interpret. Um, and so first of all, to answer your question, right, when an agent is spun up and given an identity, right, these are um, so very interesting to your point, right? An agent is not a human where it has to come in and sit at a desk. It can be created out of thin air and provisioned an identity, right? And so now your identity provider has to tie into your network and your
Yes.
applications. And so
And you can't send an MFA to somebody who never existed before. Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. And so the way, I guess, the vision is that, okay, there is a set of agents that can do tasks, but once that agent has completed that task, it's no longer able to go conduct that task again, right? And so, for example, with financial information, go access this report and create another report out of it. Well, okay, that agent would then spin up, it would receive its its access from their customer's identity provider, and it would say, you only have access to Google Drive to this document. And then once the agent has retrieved that document, now committed it to, let's say, its memory, and has access to its tools, for example, if it's going to create a spreadsheet in Google Drive, okay, well, now you have access to Google Sheets. And so once it's done analyzing this financial data, it's now transferred it to Sheets, and then its identity is revoked. That sheet is then, sent, let's say, sent to the human that requested it, or even in some cases, another agent. I'm sure that's
Uh-huh. Yes.
that's an example. And then that whole process, I guess, dies off. But what's even more interesting is, the context around, I guess, how the data flows through what we call the MCP server to an agent. And there is a whole suite of solutions out there now around MCP server security, because at one point there really wasn't a way to secure MCP servers, and we announced an intent to acquire a company called Portkey, which provides an MCP server with a set of security controls on it. Things like access, where you can have visibility into access control and authentication. So, what do the agents have access to, and when have they had access to it, as well as kind of real-time provisioning against those. That one's been interesting for us to see as well. And once we purchase it, I'm very confident it'll be integrated into our AI suite of products.
As it should be. And well, that's always not always, but it's mostly the reason behind acquisitions so that you can quickly scale and stay up to speed with the changing market. Um, so, all right, we talked about identity, and so how do you ensure? Let's talk about the authenticity of an agent. Um, and we kind of touched on this with your mother not realizing that you drowning in a lake is AI generated. How are we finding ways to say this is an authentic agent that is allowed to access this, or this is an authentic agent and not, Prem dying in a lake because his cousins are playing a cruel joke.
Yeah, that's also an interesting one. So like it seems like you're asking more so like how has a company that's deploying agents, how do we verify that this agent now has access to this set of tools versus like an agent that is not real, that somebody else spun up that gave an identity to it.
Yes, yes, that's exactly it.
So, so I guess back to that multi-step sort of identity verification, which I guess in a way to boil it down, it's similar to what we do today, right? Where you enter your password and then it verifies, it sends you a text and you verify it through multiple ways. I think so. A couple things. So n number one is, um, making sure the workload identity is short-lived. So an agent doesn't get a long-term username and password. Its access is short-lived. The second is, um, even before the agent's token is validated, it looks at the environment the agent's running in. So is it running in the right container? Is it from a approved IP? Is it you accessing a verified code repository? And then, every conversation requires kind of a two-way handshake, right? So if both sides can't continuously prove their identity, then that data should no longer be able to pass, right? And so
Bingo.
many layers to that. And that's probably the most fun part about cybersecurity because I'll get conversations, right? How do we secure our users? Well, are these users coming into the office? Are they connecting remotely? What browser are they using? What machine do they have? And so, yeah, it has been very interesting. And from an AI standpoint, it's the same way. You can't just control your AI deployment in one area, right? It can't
No,
just be at the endpoint. It can't be at the data center, right? And so what we're seeing is multiple deployment methods for enforcement, right? Are you going to have an LLM or an agent sit behind a firewall in a way? Or are you going to have it call out to an API to verify? And so that's what we're seeing is, now our customers are like, how do we deploy this? And what are the considerations and where do we deploy it? And so as as companies like ourselves are kind of developing these security tools, it's interesting to see, we're having to think about those same different layers of security
yes.
that,
Yeah.
in the AI space.
Well, and I also think you have to look at that agent and try to determine where the request is coming from as well. Because ultimately the agents work off of instructions, do this, do that, get me this, get me that. Um, so being able to determine that you have a valid requestor. Now, I mean, we could really go deep that that requestor could be another agent, and then you find out where that came from. I mean, it's mind-boggling to a certain degree. It really is.
It's interesting. Yeah, and I think we're going to see that play out a little bit more. And one of the things I think some of my mentors in the space in hospitality are doing, it's very interesting. The first thing I think they've had to do is maybe educate their leadership. Right? It's not as easy as downloading Gemini or Claude and saying, okay, now go make us more efficient.
Yeah,
Um, it's a data issue, it's a sovereignty issue, it's a compliance issue. And so, first of all, it seems like there's this mad rush to now educate, right? What do we as an organization have to do before we can even deploy an agent? And
yes.
then the second is, okay, what's the use case that's going to give us the hardest hit? And I see it in so many different ways. One large casino company is rolling it out to through development, right? So, the goal is to make, I guess, in a way, like vibe coding, a thing throughout the organization. And it's pretty wild to see these proof of concepts that are simple. You tell this agent I need to spin up a container, and as a developer, you don't care, but it automatically finds the place to run it the cheapest and the best, and then it deploys your environment for you. And that's no longer you creating a ticket for your infrastructure
Yeah,
team.
yeah.
And so I see
So,
that way, and then I see the other way, right? Companies want to, my finance guy wants to access a report that has to run every day, and he has to manipulate it. Well, can't we just deploy an agent for him?
mhm.
And so identifying those use cases and then running them seem to be the most important. And paramount to that is educating your own. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Educating the executive leadership is probably the hardest part because they're constantly 2, 3, 5 years out strategically thinking, and when you're trying to educate them on something that's here and now, they don't have the time, the patience to deal with it. So just get it done. Well, whoa, wait a minute. This is a big change and a big shift from business as usual.
oh yeah, and even
Yeah.
funnier, I saw an CIO's presentation to his ownership that he had leveraged Claude to make. So he asked Claude, "What do we need to do as an organization to get ready to deploy you?" And it put together, in a way, right, with his input, but it put together a very, very solid deck that he then presented to the owners.
Yeah,
Um,
perfect. I mean, that's what I would have done. That's the beauty of AI. I mean, there's the bad side, and we've been concentrating a lot on the, I wouldn't call it the bad side, so to speak, but the challenges that come with deploying AI. But there's also so many benefits. I think about my business life before AI and how did I do it? That's all I want to know is how did I do it? Because taking meeting notes, summarizing things, building decks, starting from scratch. Okay, we want to deploy XYZ. Where do I even start? Yes, there's a lot of intrinsic experience and knowledge that comes with being a tenured person. But boy, does it really make your day-to-day life less stressful because it takes a lot of that heat off. And then you can do the fun part, which is the fine tuning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think everybody in their mind has an idea of where AI can help them the most. I think what we're maybe waiting for is the solution that can actually do it without a lot of revision or hey, that word's misspelled or you counted that wrong. And it's very interesting to see, sometimes it gets a lot of the broad conceptual things right, but then a name is misspelled.
Yeah.
And so, getting those tweaks down, I think, is what we're all waiting for. But I see these visions where, exactly like you mentioned, half of the busy work in our days, even our lives, do we need a tax person anymore? Do we need a realtor anymore?
Yeah. Do you? Well, I think you do in some ways. I mean, we could go down a rabbit hole on that one. But do you need a personal assistant? Maybe not.
No.
And there's a lot of things that you could really improve your life with, and that's the good side of AI. Welcome back, everyone. Prem and I were just chit-chatting on the side, and my background is a little blurred here, but in my background, people who have been in meetings with me, they know that that's the Muhammad Ali knocking out Sonny Liston picture. And I have a great story that we're going to share here. But I love boxing. Always have. Grew up, my dad had me watching, boxing matches all the time. And I notice in your background that you have Elvis and Muhammad Ali. You want to talk about where you got that picture?
Yeah. Well, I remember there was a charity event maybe 3 years ago now. And what was it? Something in tech, right?
Yeah, it was, they call it diversity for tots,
Yep.
something along those lines, but really
Diversity and
it's diversity.
technology. And it's our local, sponsored by casino executives where they bring in all their vendors and local partners. And they had a live auction, which is interesting. But I saw this picture of Elvis and Muhammad Ali, and I remember thinking, so the description was that it came from an actual Vegas casino. Was that correct?
It was taken in a Vegas casino.
Okay.
So what is now the Westgate used to be the Hilton, and that's where Elvis performed a lot. So that's where the photograph was taken.
Gotcha. Okay, so I
Yes.
remember reading the description, and for me, when I go to these live auctions, because I'm a sales guy, I don't want to overpay for things despite that it's going to a good cause. And so I think that there was just a couple bids on it, and it was $100 at the time. So I just said, okay, I'll put $300 down on this photo, and I walked away. And then a couple days later, I got an email to pick it up at the Wynn's offices, and I did. And turns out after we spoke, this was actually your photo, right?
Yes, I donated that picture to the auction. Because I had it in my home for many, many years, and it's very, very interesting that you got it. So that just goes to show what a small world it is. And it now it's kind of sort of back in my home. It used to be with this guy, but the new place, there's no place to put it. So I wanted it to have a good home.
Even crazier is I live so close to you too, so it
Are
traveled
you
a couple
kidding?
miles away.
Well, we're going to have to get together after work one day,
Yeah.
or we'll invite you over. We'll get my. I'm not going to drop names, but there's another person in our
Yeah,
community that lives right here, and we meet for happy hour every once in a while. So we'll make sure we get you invited next time.
I'll be there.
It'll be a lot of fun. So we need to close this down a little bit. We're getting close to the end of our time. Uh, any advice as we move forward into this AI bullet train that's coming at us? What kind of advice would you want to offer a CIO or a CTO as they are looking to move forward? That they're probably doing it now, but
Yeah. I think it's twofold. Maybe even threefold, I guess. So the
yeah,
first is probably inventory, right? Understanding what is being used in your environment today that you may not be aware of and have controls on. And so, leveraging network related sensors like your firewalls or even your switches that might have that advanced layer of analytics, right? See what people are using, and maybe that can help you determine your internal use cases for using AI, right? And then I think the second is probably governance right behind that.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
what are we okay sharing? How do we control that? What is our sensitive data? Where do we want to even run these models, right? And so, specific to a lot of our gaming customers, are they allowed to process that data in a cloud environment, or does it need to be within the walls of the state and or in their data center? What level of control do they want to have over that data? And then lastly, I think is probably that piece we talked about where educating your executives or above you on what it actually takes to get to a point where you can deploy effective AI, right? I think finding those, maybe not the hype around AI, but finding those use cases that AI can concretely solve for you and presenting, okay, here's what it's going to do for us. Here's what we need to do from a network, data, and governance standpoint to help us get there. I think that those three pillars are probably the place I'd say to start. I guess maybe this is all for nothing because I know AI is being deployed in every single company today. Um, but getting that control piece or visibility piece seems to be the most compelling. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I have conversations with CISOs today, and we'll run a quick assessment, right? Let us just show you what's being run in your environment. We'll just pull the data off the firewalls, and you see the eyes light up. Oh my gosh, I didn't know we had Grammarly, or I didn't know X sensitive data was being sent to X tool, or the Zoom AI assistant is on for these calls, and you then can establish the governance once in a way where the leak is. And so probably best time to do it now before it's too late. But certainly that's a good starting point.
That is a great starting point. I mean, security operations is all about finding the leaks and plugging them. And if you can do regular assessments, that way you're constantly, I mean, one assessment, one and done is not the way it works because it's a fluid environment. And just create an action plan to keep, you know, plugging those holes in the dike. Um, that's a good and advice for the future. So if you want more information, um, because you know we can't call you all the time and say, "Hey, Prem, tell us about this." What would be your recommendations? I know Palo Alto has a lot of resources. So what would you recommend if we wanted to dig more, especially around the Palo side?
Yeah. Well, so there's many ways you can reach out to Palo Alto Network. So number one is if you know your sales rep or account team or somebody there,
There he
always
is.
always happy to answer a call. We also, on our website, we have a US sales hotline, even like sort of an email inbox. We'll take requests there. And yeah, I guess one other thing I forgot, but we did announce this service that we offer where we will turn an LLM that's very powerful at your environment and show you where those weaknesses are from your code, your network. And so we can even do simple things to help you understand where your vulnerabilities are. And so, yeah, the best way to do that would be, there's a North American sales hotline, contacting your rep, contacting you, Leslie, and getting in touch with me. I'm happy to help broker the conversations. And we're always here to educate, right? So I think that's the most important thing. My job is to educate customers. They've got to make the hard job and actually go deploy things.
And do it. Yes. I had a leader one time tell me, make time in your work week, 1 hour a day. And yes, it seems like it's annoying, but always meet with a vendor because they can educate you on things that you never even thought about. So, meet with your vendors. because you don't have to buy from them, but meet with them because you never know what you'll learn. And maybe it is something that I didn't know I needed that. You don't know what you don't know, right?
I hear it from
Yeah.
customers all the time. What's new with your company? How come nobody's ever told me? Right? And so establishing a cadence, or even sometimes I'll do 3 series emails, right? Here's what we're seeing, here's what we're doing, here's
Yeah.
what you should do.
Yeah.
But always making sure, you know, it's in the frame of education I've seen has always been, well received by our customer base.
Exactly. They like that. And keep it short and sweet. You don't want to read too much because we don't have enough time. Get your open claw to read it for you and give you a summary.
Absolutely.
So will we be seeing you at the round table
Yeah,
this fall? Awesome.
absolutely. I'm looking forward to being there. And once again, thank you so much for having us on.
Yes, thanks for joining us. We're gonna wrap it up now. The roundtable is the end of September this year. It's kind of everything seems to be early this year. All the holidays are coming, a week or two early. So the roundtable, look for Prem when you're there. Look for me. Jeannie has me doing all kinds of behind the scenes stuff. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you so much for the fun conversation today. I've really, really enjoyed it. And, pardon my sniffling and my frog in my throat. This was actually recorded 2 days after the big windstorm in Vegas, so I'm still recovering.
Thank you for having me, Leslie.
All right. Well, have a good one, everyone, and we will see you at the next one.